Hey everyone, 99% of you watching aren't subscribed. Let's change that. Hit that subscribe button, and at 1,000 subscribers, we'll drop special stories just for you.
The first sign was not the ships. It was a silence. At 2:17 Universal Time Coordinated, 17 deep space monitoring stations reported simultaneous gravitational distortions just beyond the orbit of Neptune. The readings didn't make sense. The distortions were symmetrical, controlled, artificial. 3 minutes later, every major satellite network experienced a synchronized flicker. Not a shutdown, not interference. A test. Astronomers from Tokyo to Chile watched their monitors in confusion as something vast began to slide into view. Objects too dark to reflect starlight, outlined only by the way they bent it. Then the sky changed. Across the night side of Earth, stars began disappearing, one by one, then in clusters. By the time governments understood what they were seeing, it was already too late to prepare the public. Thousands of vessels emerged for what scientists would later call a fold rupture in space-time. They arranged themselves in perfect geometric formation around Earth's orbit, like a crown tightening around a skull. No weapons fired, no explosions, just presence. And that was worse. Panic on a blue planet. World leaders were awakened by emergency calls. Military commands went to DEFCON levels unseen since the Cold War. Nuclear submarines surfaced. Fighter jets scrambled. Anti-satellite systems powered on. Social media erupted before official announcements could be made. Hashtag first contact. Hashtag alien ships. Hashtag is this real? In New York, people flooded into the streets, staring upward between skyscrapers. In Mumbai, traffic froze as drivers abandoned vehicles to look at the sky. In rural Australia, families stepped onto porches beneath an unfamiliar ceiling of hovering darkness. No one fired, because no one knew where to aim. The broadcast, at 3:02 Universal Time Coordinated, every electronic device on Earth activated. Phones vibrated in pockets. Televisions turned on inside empty homes. Aircraft cockpit displays flickered. Even digital billboards in remote deserts lit up. Then the image stabilized. A throne room of impossible scale filled every screen. The walls appeared carved from metallic crystal, glowing faintly with violet veins of energy. At the center stood a towering alien figure clad in gold and ivory armor that looked grown rather than forged. 12 feet tall, broad-shouldered, crowned with a ring of floating, jagged metal. His skin was pale gray, etched with faint luminous markings that pulsed like a heartbeat. His eyes burned with a steady violet glow, not angry, not frantic, just certain. A chorus of distorted alien voices spoke first, harsh, layered tones that vibrated through speakers. Then the translation began. I am King Frection of the Carthal Dominion. The voice was deep and perfectly calm. Behind him, the camera shifted, revealing a panoramic window. Through it, Earth could be seen from orbit, small, blue, fragile. You are not the first world to resist enlightenment. The alien king stepped closer. The camera adjusted automatically, as though it feared him. Your species demonstrates aggression, instability, and resource inefficiency. You fight one another over territory and belief. A faint tilt of his head. We will correct this. Across Earth, no one breathed. You will surrender governance of your planet. Your military assets will be dismantled. Your industrial production will serve the Dominion. A pause. If you comply, your extinction will be unnecessary. The words echoed. If you comply, your extinction will be unnecessary. The screen flickered slightly as Threxion's glowing eyes narrowed. Refusal will result in planetary pacification. The feed cut. The silence after. For 7 seconds, nothing happened. Then the world exploded into motion. Emergency sessions of the United Nations were called within minutes. Rival nations opened secure communication lines that hadn't been used cooperatively in decades. China contacted the United States. The United States contacted Russia. India contacted Europe. Old enemies suddenly remembered they were on the same planet. Scientists analyzed the transmission. Military analysts ran simulations. Economists predicted collapse. Religious leaders declare prophecy fulfilled. Markets crash within the hour. And yet, something strange began to emerge. Not surrender, not hysteria, but anger. The more people replayed the broadcast, the clearer something became. The alien king had not negotiated. He had not offered partnership. He had issued an ultimatum. In bars, in living rooms, in military bases, in underground bunkers, the same sentence was spoken over and over. They think we'll just give up? Humanity's reply. At 6:45 Universal Time Coordinated, Earth transmitted its first unified message into orbit. It was not elegant. It was not poetic. It was a patchwork video compiled in less than 3 hours. Footage of cities, of oceans, of farmers, of construction workers, of scientists in labs, of soldiers standing in snow and desert heat. It ended with representatives from over 100 nations standing side by side. No single leader spoke. Instead, the message displayed one line in every major human language: "We do not surrender." The transmission was blasted toward every alien ship in orbit. No response came immediately, but several of the massive vessels shifted position. Slowly, strategically, like wolves tightening a circle. High above Earth, within his command vessel, King Frection watched the human reply. And for the first time, a faint crease formed in the glowing markings across his face. Not fear, amusement. "Prepare the first wave," he ordered. Below him, Earth rotated peacefully beneath sunrise, unaware that in less than 12 hours, the Carthel did not begin with annihilation. They began with demonstration. At 11 o'clock Universal Time Coordinated, a single beam of white-violet energy lanced down from orbit and struck an uninhabited stretch of the Pacific Ocean. The sea boiled outward in a perfect circle. Water vapor climbed into the sky, like a pillar connecting Earth to its invaders. The message was clear: we can erase you. Then the real invasion started. Fire from the heavens. Dropships detached from the orbital fleet in synchronized waves. Thousands of them. They pierced the atmosphere without visible heat shields, descending like controlled meteors toward strategic targets. Military bases, power grids, communications hubs, ports. They did not strike randomly. They struck surgically. Fort Bragg, Ramstein Air Base, naval facilities in the South China Sea, Arctic radar stations, satellite control centers in French Guiana. Within the first hour, coordinated plasma strikes disabled over 30% of Earth's known long-range communication systems. The Carthel believed that once command structures collapsed, resistance would fracture. It was how every other world had fallen. Boots on the ground. Alien soldiers emerged from the smoking craters left by their ships. They stood nearly 8 feet tall, armored in layered plates that shimmered like insect chitin. Their rifles emitted focused plasma bursts capable of melting steel. Their helmets projected tactical overlays directly into their nervous systems. They moved with discipline, precision, cold efficiency. In Warsaw, a column of Carthel infantry advanced down an empty highway until the asphalt beneath them detonated. Improvised explosives, buried overnight by civilians who watched too many war documentaries to underestimate an invader. In Arizona, alien walkers strode across desert sand, only to be disabled by electromagnetic pulse devices assembled from scavenged industrial equipment. In Lagos, alien forces seized a port facility in under 9 minutes. By the 10th minute, dock workers had locked the harbor gates and rammed fuel tankers into the entrance channel, trapping the Carthel inside a maze of burning oil and steel. The invaders began reporting something unfamiliar to their commanders: unpredictability, the human problem. Carthel war doctrine depended on fear, overwhelming force, demonstrations of superiority. Most civilizations they conquered collapsed psychologically before sustained resistance became necessary. Humans did not collapse. They adapted. When orbital strikes disabled satellites, amateur radio operators revived analog communication networks. When drones were shot down, hobbyists rebuilt them in garages. When cities were partially occupied, civilians evacuated through subway tunnels and re-emerged behind alien lines. In Ukraine, veterans trained volunteers in abandoned warehouses. In Brazil, Urban gangs turned their knowledge of narrow alleyways into guerrilla warfare advantages. In South Korea, engineers rewired factory assembly lines to produce armor-piercing munitions instead of automobiles. No central command directed at all. It was decentralized, chaotic, and therefore impossible to fully suppress. The sky fights back. The Carthel expected Earth's air forces to be destroyed within days. Instead, human pilots did something reckless. They ignored survival odds. Fighter squadrons launched from damaged runways, using terrain-hugging flight paths to avoid orbital detection. Old aircraft were retrofitted with experimental railgun pods. Civilian satellites were redirected into collision courses with alien vessels. One particularly bold maneuver, later called the Iron Rain, involved decommissioned space station components being dropped deliberately into low orbit to create debris fields that damaged Carthel supply ships. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't clean. But it worked. Alien casualty reports began to climb. The psychological shift. By the third week, Carthel commanders reported something unprecedented to King Frection. Earth was not pacifying. It was escalating. For every human settlement destroyed, recruitment numbers rose. For every alien patrol victorious, 3 more encountered ambushes elsewhere. Humans broadcast their own propaganda into orbit. Footage of burning alien vehicles, captured weapons, cheering civilians. They turned war into defiance. The Carthel had studied human history. They noted world wars, civil conflicts, nuclear brinkmanship. They had concluded humanity was self-destructive. They had not understood that those same traits made them resilient. Humans were accustomed to hardship, to rebuilding, to fighting even when logic said retreat. The Dominion had conquered species that valued stability above all. Humanity valued stubbornness. Losses mount. By the second month, alien casualty projections exceeded acceptable thresholds. Entire battalions vanished in forested regions where thermal camouflage and improvised traps negated technological superiority. Naval engagements in the Atlantic resulted in human submarines crippling Carthel landing carriers with coordinated torpedo swarms. Urban warfare proved worst of all. Cities refused to stay conquered. Even when secured, they erupted again days later. A Carthel general summarized in a transmission intercepted by human intelligence. The species does not behave rationally. They continue fighting beyond strategic viability. To which another replied, then remove their leadership. But there was no single leader to remove. The King's Fury, aboard the massive command vessel Eternal Ascendancy, King Frection watched casualty projections scroll across translucent holographic panels. Red indicators multiplied. He dismissed 3 high commanders within one rotation. You assured me they were fractured, he said coldly. They are fractured, Majesty, one replied carefully. That is the problem. Frection stepped toward the observation viewport. Below, Earth rotated in serene indifference. They defy natural order, he said. No subordinate species has resisted this long. A silence fell across the command chamber. Then Frection made a decision that would alter the war. I will descend personally. Gasps rippled through the Carthel Council. Royal doctrine forbade such risk. The king's presence symbolized inevitability. He did not fight wars. He ended them. But Frexion's pride had been pierced. These creatures believe themselves equal, he said. I will demonstrate their error. The fleet began repositioning to escort the royal descent craft. Across Earth, intelligence systems detected unusual movement in the orbital formation. Human analysts leaned closer to screens. Something big was coming. And for the first time since the invasion began, human commanders smiled, because arrogance was predictable. The moment King Frexion's flagship began its descent, every major intelligence agency on Earth saw it. It was impossible to miss. Unlike the smaller drop ships, the Royal Command vessel did not slip through the atmosphere like a spear. It announced itself. The sky above Central Europe shimmered as space distorted, bending light around a descending mass nearly 3 kilometers wide. Clouds vaporized in expanding rings. Static rolled across radio bands worldwide. The ship did not hide. It wanted to be seen. In bunkers from Washington to Beijing, analysts stared at the same telemetry. Energy readings off the scale. Heavy escort formations. Royal insignia confirmed by intercepted transmissions. One American general broke the silence in the war room. That's not a commander. A British intelligence officer nodded. That's the Crown. Operation Gravedigger. Within 12 minutes, a joint strike plan, assembled from 6 nations, was activated. It had been drafted weeks earlier under a simple assumption. If the alien leadership ever gets arrogant enough to come down here, the plan relied on one uncomfortable truth. Humans could not win a direct confrontation in orbit, but in atmosphere, gravity was an equalizer. The royal vessel descended toward the ruins of Berlin, a symbolic choice. A city rebuilt from devastation before. A city meant to demonstrate human defeat once more. Instead, it became bait. Underground, hidden across abandoned subway lines and reinforced bunkers, human forces waited. Electronic warfare units powered up devices never tested outside simulations. Civilian power grids were deliberately rerouted, creating electromagnetic interference patterns designed to mimic infrastructure failure. The Carthel scanners interpreted chaos. They did not detect coordination. That was the first failure. The sky closes in. As the flagship slowed above Berlin, its escort fighters expanded into defensive formation. Then the trap snapped shut. From beneath cloud cover, squadrons of human aircraft burst upward. Not in a straight assault, but in chaotic vectors. Some jets carried experimental hypersonic missiles. Others carried nothing but electronic countermeasure pods designed to blind alien targeting systems. Simultaneously, railgun batteries hidden across Eastern Europe fired. The rounds were primitive compared to plasma weaponry, but they were fast. Too fast. 2 escort ships shattered midair. The royal vessel's shields flared violently, absorbing impact after impact. Then came the second phase. Civilian satellites, reprogrammed over weeks, ignited emergency thrusters and altered orbit. From above, they fell like metallic meteors. One struck the flagship's shield envelope at near orbital velocity. The shield did not fail, but it flickered, and flickering was enough. The fall of the ascendancy. Inside the command chamber, warning sigils exploded across holographic displays. Shield fluctuation exceeding tolerance. Atmospheric interference destabilizing propulsion. Threction gripped the Aura's throne as the ship lurched. "Stabilize," he ordered. Another satellite fragment struck the hull. Then a coordinated EMP surge detonated from hidden ground arrays. For 0.8 seconds, the flagship lost coherent shield alignment. Human missiles, dozens of them, slammed into the same section of exposed hull. The eternal ascendancy began to fall. Not gracefully, not majestically. It tore through the atmosphere trailing fire, crashing into the outskirts of Berlin with shockwave that shattered windows 20 kilometers away. Dust rose in a towering column. Across the globe, billions watched the live feeds. For the first time since the invasion began, an alien capital ship had fallen. The ground war. The crash site became hell within minutes. Royal Guard units deployed instantly from wreckage, towering Carthel elites clad in heavier armor than standard infantry. Their plasma weapons carved glowing trenches through concrete and steel. Human forces advanced anyway. French armored divisions approached from the west, Polish mechanized units from the east. American and German special operations teams moved through subway access tunnels beneath the impact zone. Drones swarmed overhead, feeding real-time battlefield data into a shared multinational network. It was not one army. It was all of them. Carthel Royal Guards fought with brutal efficiency, cutting down waves of attackers. But numbers, relentless, coordinated numbers, began to overwhelm even elite defenses. A British commander gave the order that shifted the battle. Disable, don't destroy. The objective was no longer victory. It was capture, face to face. King Threction emerged from the burning wreckage nearly 30 minutes after impact. His armor was cracked. One of the floating crown segments flickered erratically, but he stood tall amid smoke and flame. Human soldiers paused involuntarily at the sight of him. He was enormous, radiant, terrifying. "This planet will burn for this insult," he thundered, voice amplified by damaged armor systems. He raised an arm, and 3 soldiers were thrown backward by a kinetic blast. Snipers fired simultaneously, not at his head, at the joints of his armor. Microfractures widened. A coordinated strike team surged forward under covering fire. Electromagnetic nets, developed in secret labs across 3 continents, were launched from compressed cannons. The nets wrapped around Threction mid-stride. He roared, energy flaring outward, frying nearby drones. But the nets tightened. Layered fields disrupted the power flow of his armor. More teams piled in. Stun rounds, shock batons, physical force, human hands. The alien king fell to one knee, then both. For a moment, silence hung over the battlefield, a being who had conquered 1,000 worlds. Kneeling in the mud, the drag, Threction struggled as reinforced restraints locked around his wrists and neck. "You are insects," he spat, violet eyes blazing. A German soldier wiped soot from his face and replied calmly, "Maybe." With coordinated effort, 6 soldiers pulled the Chain King upright. The image was captured from 100 angles, helmet cams, drones, satellite feeds. The Carthel monarch, towering, radiant, furious, dragged through dirt and broken concrete by the very species he had called primitive. Across orbit, the alien fleet went still. No immediate retaliation, no planetary bombardment. They were waiting for orders, orders that would not come, because their king was now on the ground. And every second he remained there, the balance of power shifted. The broadcast. Within minutes, human media networks did something no alien strategist anticipated. They went live. Unfiltered footage streamed into orbit on every frequency the Carthel used. King Threction in chains, royal armor cracked, crown dimmed, not executed, not tortured, just defeated. In the command bunkers beneath Berlin, a quiet realization spread among human leaders. This was no longer just a battlefield victory. This was leverage. And above them, in the silent vacuum of space, the Carthel fleet began to reposition, uncertain for the first time in centuries. The hunters had come expecting submission. Instead, their king was being dragged through Earth's mud. The galaxy had never seen a Carthel king kneel. Across Dominion space, military outposts, conquered worlds, and subject species received the same emergency transmission, a live feed from Earth. It was not polished, not ceremonial. The camera shook as human soldiers moved across broken ground. In the center of the frame, King Threction, chained, alive, dragged through mud and ash beneath a gray Berlin sky. The symbolism was unmistakable. The Carthel did not lose leaders. They did not negotiate from weakness. They did not allow humiliation. And yet here it was, broadcast deliberately on every frequency the Dominion had ever used to threaten another world. Humanity had turned the invasion into theater. Orbit holds its breath. Above Earth, the Carthel fleet hovered in rigid formation, weapons primed, targeting systems aligned with major population centers. One order could reduce cities to vapor. But that order required authorization. Authorization required the king. And the king was staring up at the sky from the end of a reinforced restraint cable. Inside the largest remaining command ship, Carthel High Commander Valor faced an unprecedented equation. If they fired, Earth would die, but so would the king. If they retreated, they preserved the monarchy and admitted defeat. The Dominion had never encountered a species willing to risk everything on psychological warfare. Humans had calculated something critical. Empires run on perception, and perception was collapsing. The conversation. In a secured underground facility, King Threction was brought before a coalition of human leaders. No grand hall, no stage, just a reinforced chamber and a long metal table. His restraints were magnetically anchored to the floor. Despite the damage to his armor, he radiated fury. "You have doomed yourselves," he said evenly. "My fleet will scour this planet." A Brazilian diplomat leaned forward. "Then you die first." The words were not shouted. They were simple, matter of fact. A screen behind the humans activated, displaying a live orbital feed. Crosshairs hovered over the Carthel fleet, Earth's remaining nuclear arsenal locked and ready. Humanity could not win a full exchange, but they could ensure mutual devastation. Threxion's glowing markings dimmed slightly. You would annihilate your own world. A Japanese defense minister answered calmly. If the alternative is slavery? Yes. Silence filled the chamber. For the first time in recorded Dominion history, a conquered species had demonstrated willingness to burn with their conquerors. That was new. That was dangerous. The calculus of fear. Human strategists understood something the Carthel had forgotten after centuries of effortless expansion. Fear only works when your enemy values survival more than freedom. Earth had centuries of history proving otherwise. Revolutions, world wars, nuclear standoffs. Humans were intimately familiar with the edge of extinction, and they had built doctrines around it. The live broadcast resumed. This time, it showed something different. Not soldiers, not violence, but reconstruction crews already rebuilding damaged infrastructure. Medical teams treating wounded civilians and captured alien soldiers alike. Engineers studying down Carthel technology. The message was layered. We can fight, we can endure, and we can learn. The decision in orbit. Hours passed. Tension stretched then across two civilizations. Finally, a transmission came from the Carthel fleet. It was not from Threxion. It was from High Commander Valor. Release the Sovereign. The alien voice demanded. We withdraw from the system. Human leaders exchanged glances. They had expected threats. Bluster. Instead, they heard calculation. A British admiral responded. Your fleet begins full retreat beyond lunar orbit first. A pause. Then, one by one, the massive alien ships shifted trajectory. Engines flared. Formations broke. The tightening crown around Earth slowly opened. Across the globe, telescopes confirmed it. The fleet was leaving. Cheers erupted in cities worldwide. But the humans did not celebrate yet. Not until the final ship cleared Earth's gravitational boundary. Not until the last weapons lock disengaged. Only then did the chamber doors open. The release. King Threxion stood once more before human leadership, still restrained. You believe this is victory, he said quietly. A Nigerian general shook his head. No. He stepped closer. This is a warning. The restraints disengaged. Threxion flexed his hands, stunned. You would free me? A German chancellor answered. You're going home. The alien king's eyes narrowed. Why? An American commander replied. Because dead kings become martyrs. He gestured toward the sky. Defeated kings tell stories. The aftermath. Threxion was returned to his fleet at the edge of lunar orbit under heavy escort. No ceremony. No apology. Just a final transmission from Earth. Do not return. As the Dominion ships vanished into fold space, shockwaves rippled far beyond the solar system. Conquered civilizations whispered. Subject worlds calculated. For the first time in centuries, the Carthel had retreated, not from superior firepower, but from resolve. The galactic shift. In the years that followed, something subtle changed across interstellar politics. The Dominion expanded no further toward the Orion Arm. Diplomatic envoys replaced invasion fleets along several contested borders. Rebellions flared on worlds that had long believed resistance impossible. And in the private archives of the Carthel monarchy, a classified doctrine was recorded. Humanity, high-risk civilization, capable of disproportionate retaliation. Psychological warfare proficiency extreme. Avoid direct confrontation. On Earth, life resumed its uneven rhythm. Cities rebuilt. Nations argued again. Humanity returned to its chaotic normalcy. But one thing had shifted permanently. They were no longer alone. And somewhere in deep space, King Threxion carried a memory of mud on his armor, and the knowledge that there existed a species willing to drag a king through it. The aliens had wanted war. Humanity had given them something far worse.